Oh, yeah, if there's a non-members, as far as the business meeting goes, you're dismissed as of right now, and then we'll get the business meeting on the way. Thank you.
Okay, we just have a couple of orders of business here that we need to take care of. We have two constitution changes that have been posted out in the foyer for about the last 3 weeks. So there's been opportunity to read them, pray about them, think about them. The first one is Article 5, Section 2, which is duties of officers, and in particular the Board of Deacons and Trustees. The current wording states there shall be 3 trustees elected to serve in all above except the church ordinances. And what our recommendation was to change that to there shall be trustees elected to serve in all the above except the church ordinances. The number of trustees to be elected shall be recommended by the deacons and pastor and shall be approved by the church. So that's the proposed wording for that. Do we have a motion to accept that change? I see Tom's hand go up. Do we have a second? Bill? All in favor, signify by the raised hand. All opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. The second change, Article 8, which is unauthorized expenditures. The current wording is any expenditures in excess of $200 and not authorized by the regular business meeting must be authorized by the pastor, deacons, and trustees, or the board of deacons and trustees if the pastor is vacant. Excuse me. Anything over $500 must be approved by the church body. Exceptions are building maintenance and church transportation of emergency nature. So that's the old wording. What we're proposing is that any expenditure in excess of $500 instead of the $200 that was there and not authorized in the regular business meeting must be authorized by the pastor, deacons, and trustees or the board of deacons and trustees if the pastor is vacant. Anything over $2,000 to replace what was $500 in the old wording, now $2,000, must be approved by the church body. Exceptions are building maintenance and church transportation of an emergency nature. So what we're essentially doing is changing those two values, $200 and $500, to $500 and $2,000. The reason for this is you can't do much to maintain the building with $500, folks. That's just the bottom line. You know, the deacons and trustees need to have the ability to do things that are required to maintain the properties and so forth. So I'd entertain a motion. Okay, we have Alex moving. Do we have a second? Okay, we got several of them here. All in favor signify by the raised hand. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and that is what we had for business for the meeting this morning. Do we have any? Yeah, Bill?
Can you go ahead and put that thing in, the nomination for Brad as pastor here? I know you mentioned that a couple weeks ago. How does that work? Can we start that at all?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Okay, you had said in last month in that the church body can make a nomination for him.
The church body can make a recommendation or can make a motion to that effect, but one thing that I would suggest we be cautious about is our Constitution has a specific process for us to follow. You as a church can do can vote to suspend the Constitution or anything like that, but it's not something that I would recommend that we do often or that we make a habit of it. The Constitution is there to be a document to guide us as we carry out our business. If somebody wants to make a motion to that effect, it's not something that I can recommend from here because we have a process specified to follow. And also, you know, I don't know how to say this other than, you know, I don't want to shortcut things because sometimes we have to wait on the Lord, right? And sometimes we have to wait on the Lord to show us what we need to be doing, what we need to be following, and who needs to be in that place. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and lecture you. If you want to make that motion and somebody wants to second it, and we will have to decide, well, what percentage of the vote would have to be required to make that law as far as the church is concerned. So we're treading on kind of a thin ice here. It's not something I'd recommend, but it's something you as the church can certainly do. I don't know what more I can say. I'm trying not to be offensive and not to step on anybody's toes or anything like that. But when we decide to suspend the Constitution and it becomes a regular occurrence, there's little point in having a Constitution to guide us. Now, the Word of God guides us too, right? And that's takes precedence over our Constitution or anything else. So if it sounds like I'm treading on broken glass, well, that's I'm trying to walk softly here because I'm not trying to dictate over you what you as a church can do. So if that wants to become a formal motion, then, sorry? Okay. What is the motion you're making exactly for the minutes?
As far as I understood from that meeting that you had a while back to that there was something in our Constitution that allowed that, and some wording in that you could go ahead and nominate, and he's already done the job in that, he's done a great job, he knows hard, and, you know, his resume speaks for itself, and I think you could walk around this room and ask everybody in that, and everybody will second the motion. So I understand what you're saying about the Constitution and that. But from what I understood in the meeting, there was some type of wording where, and there was like 3 or 4 of us that were prepared to do this in nomination. I know there were 4 people that were about to do that when I heard that. So yeah, I'll make the motion now. Go ahead, because I think it is in the Constitution.
Okay, that motion needs to be specific in a sense that we need to know, well, what percentage of the vote of the church is going to pass that motion, and is it just members present, or is it all members of the church? So the further you dig into that motion, the more difficult it becomes to quantify. Well, what we have in the
Is this something that if we get together in that and give you a percentage and everything in that and spell it out, is this something that we can come back to in a couple of weeks and make that motion again?
Well, what the Constitution says is that the pulpit committee will review all of the resumes that come in, okay, and we will choose the top 3, What happens then is the number one is invited in, and they come in for a Sunday morning service, a Wednesday service if appropriate. They teach Sunday school, and they come in first as a survey visit, okay? And then we go through that whole process again, and if we decide those three are still the choice, they come in for a candidate visit. Then the week later, the church votes on that. That's the process that's defined in the Constitution, okay? And well, anyone can make a recommendation in a business meeting, okay? But again, when it comes down to choosing who our next pastor is going to be, that's a pretty important decision to make. And it's not something that should be taken lightly. It's not something that should be done just based on a recommendation, or not a recommendation, but a motion made from the floor. It's something that I think we need to consider. I love Brad like a brother, and I'd love to see him be pastor of this church. I really would, because I think he's good. I think he's a good pastor. But we still have a process that the Constitution defines for us to follow. Yeah.
So where are we at as far as getting the resumes in and stuff? Have we started that process after this budget's been approved?
We just had a resume come in this week, okay? We're not pressing it really hard right now because we don't have a budget defined yet. That budget process is in work, and Aaron has been working on that and trying to put it together for us. So we are trying to get that done.
So once we get that done, then Brad can throw his hat back in the ring and do like what Bill's asking.
Absolutely. There's no reason that he couldn't do that.
And then it'll go through the process that we were just talking about based on the Constitution and all.
Yeah, believe me, I'm not excited about going through all this again. So, this is a lot of work for the pulpit committee. It's a lot of consternation. It's a lot of thought. It's a lot of just going through these resumes, going through these questionnaires, looking for any potential issues. It's really quite a bit of work, and it's quite a bit of meetings that we go through. So I don't think any of us particularly desire for this process to go on any longer than it has to.
I guess I was just trying to let Bill know that, hey, Brad's still got the chance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, if after thinking through it, and if you had come up with a motion that included all those details about percentages and how we account for members that may or may not be here today, it's something that we could potentially vote on, but again, I recommend that we follow the Constitution as written. That's my recommendation. I'm not king. I'm not the guy who makes those decisions. You are, but I would just recommend that we wait on the Lord for Him to show us who He wants as senior pastor of this church. Okay? Yes?
Next week it was mentioned about our missionaries and the earthquake. Did we make any decisions on if we were going to try and help them out?
Oh, yes. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. Yeah, one of the things that was suggested when we had our deacon trustee meeting, was that we send $1,000 to help that ministry of those missionaries. I can't pronounce the country. New Zealand? Yeah, it was, there's a specific city there, but I can't remember. Port Vila, yeah, okay. There was an earthquake there. A number of people in their church or their assembly were injured. The spores themselves had some minor injuries that had to be taken care of. So what we suggested is that from the mission fund, we send $1,000 to them to help them in their work there and to help some of the people that were involved with the earthquake. So that's a recommendation. We'd entertain a motion to that effect. Larry, and a second. Okay, Dan. All in favor signify by the raised hand. Okay, all opposed? Okay, we have none opposed. That's great. I'm sure they will very much appreciate the help. So, do we have any other business to take care of this morning? Anything else? Okay, then let's close in prayer.